I think my body started to wear and tear, and I started realizing that my wellness wasn't intact in a way that I would have loved it to be. And not only was I working in a high pressure environment, but I was working in an environment that moved quickly. And so I'd be in Australia on Monday and in Jakarta on Tuesday and in South Africa on Wednesday. And you're probably thinking, how the hell are you getting to all those three places so quick? That's how quick things moved. And that's a lot on the body. And I also realized that I was missing out on life's experiences. And I wanted to pause and slow down and take a deep breath and feel all of what was happening.
Kahh Spence, welcome to From Vision to Creation. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. So glad to be here.
I'm super excited that you're here, and I've really been looking forward to this conversation. You have an amazing story. You've spent over a decade shaping culture, working with artists like Cardi B, Rowland, and Victoria Monét, among many others. The list just goes on, helping them step into their power and presence. But what really stands out to me is your pivot. You stepped away from building other people's brands to build your own, Samir Grey, a fragrance and personal care brand rooted in legacy, memory, and self-love. You've taken beauty beyond aesthetics and turned it into storytelling, emotion, and impact. Today, I want to unpack that evolution from creative to founder, from stylist to visionary, and what it takes to build something with intention.
Yes. Oh my God, I love that. That feels so full. It feels like such a full intro. I love that.
Hey, well, you made my job easy, Kahh. So, well, Kahh, let's start at the very beginning. Take us back to your childhood. And was there a moment when you first realized that you had an affinity for creativity?
Oh my God, my aunt has been bringing this up every day. I feel like when I was somewhere between 5 through 7, I'd force people in the living room to watch Beyonce's music videos or someone's music videos and like walk through what they're wearing and why their hair looks like this and really break all of that down. And then maybe a few years later, there were these websites where you could like dress up the dolls a little bit differently. And those were my sites. Like I was on those 24/7. And so those two experiences really let me know like, I kind of like these things. I'm into this. This feels fun.
And you spent over a decade shaping culture as a celebrity hairstylist. What led you to hair?
What led me to hair? So my mom had always been the person in the family that had done our hair. I had hair, even though I'm buzzed now, but I had hair, and my mom had always been the person that had done our hair. My father, he was a barber as well. And so I think both of their experiences and just being around women so much and helping them with their hair, I don't know, I started to fall in love with it. I started to fall in love with wanting to make women feel beautiful, then hair was the conduit for that initially.
And what was the first step you took, professionally speaking, to pursue hair as a career?
I think creating with friends, like building community with the friends that I had. So some of my friends who were really big on Tumblr, from Britney Sky to London Zylo. This is in like the 2014 to 2016 era or 2015 era. This makeup artist, Yadi's Beth, even girls like Justine Skye, like that era, like really collaborating with them before doing any sort of technical steps, like really leaning on my friends and peers to maybe test things out on their hair as I was learning in school. I think those were some of the earlier days of figuring it out, learning and having fun.
Did you start doing hair like in New York and then you moved out to LA, or how did that work out?
I started here where I was at first with my peers and friends, and then life had happened. There was so much that happened in between, and I had booked my very first client, my first big celebrity client that felt really consistent late 2016. And then that pushed me out to LA.
In your opinion, Kahh, what was the biggest transition for you personally moving from New York City to Los Angeles? Because I know they're both big cities, but they're so different. And I feel like, in my experience, at least in Los Angeles, you either get really amazing people, or I don't want to be mean, but there's a vibe here for sure. Everybody isn't the nicest. Like, I feel like New York has a reputation for people being a little abrasive. I actually find that New Yorkers are a lot kinder than Los Angelinos. How do you agree with that? And also, what was the biggest thing for you personally?
I think personally, it was a bit easier for me. I was young. I was 21, 20 or 21 at the time, very fresh. I felt like the world was at my fingertips. I was going out there working with one of the most popular artists in that time, and still to this day. And so it was a bit easier. I didn't have the experience of meeting people who may have been a bit off-putting. I think my experiences were great here in New York, while also living in LA as well. Everyone was really nice, really kind. New York's not as, at least I don't think it's a, let me not say I don't think it's a kind of place. I think we in New York, we're a bit more direct than most other places. But living in LA, it was just a different vibe. Like, the energy was different. It felt a bit lighter. It felt a bit softer in energy. Even though my life was really fast paced, I also wasn't there a lot in the earlier years. I worked a lot. And so I wasn't really in LA. My residence, my ID said I was there, but I was all over.
And what did that season of your life teach you about identity, image, and influence?
I think it taught me I am who I am. I grew up around such supportive women that instilled a sense of confidence in me from young and let me know that I am smart, I am capable, I am handsome, I am gifted. And so it didn't really change my perspective. I think it just allowed me to prosper quicker because I walked in with a level of confidence already, which I feel like I needed in order to, give it a go.
And Kahh, you were working with some of the most famous people on the planet. That's it's a high pressure environment. You were quite literally working in your career at the highest level possible. What did that experience teach you about pressure?
It taught me how to pivot easy. It taught me how to understand what it looked like to kind of comb through the weeds without feeling like I need to be broken down at any moment. I was working with some really famous people, but also friends with some really famous people as well. So it just taught me a lot about weeding out outside noise, really honing in on who you are as a person, honing in on what it is you believe in, your values, your morals, and really understanding that it's about how you show up in this world and not what the world thinks of you.
I feel like when you're doing anything at a really fast pace, there tends to be a lot of outside noise that can almost feel like an added weight that can slow you down. So it really is important to lock in. And I think that anybody that's listening right now who's just starting their careers, like, I think that this is something to pay attention for. And also not to confuse that with, I'm being distracted with outside noise, so maybe this isn't the right thing for me. It happens to everybody. But I think what you're saying here is that the antidote is to just lock in and be super focused. And I agree with that.
Yeah, because I think living in New York, something is so simple as walking down the street. There's so much happening when you're walking down the street. There's someone that might be peeing right across from your feet. Someone may be getting in a physical altercation to the left of you, but you're focused on where you need to go. And I think being here really taught me about focusing and about staying locked in on what that goal is personally and professionally, and just not allowing anything around to steer me away from that. Because things can.
And you mentioned that one of the major things that you learned working in that fast paced environment was how to pivot easily. Was there a specific moment when you knew it was time to pivot away from hairstyling?
I don't know if I'll say there was a specific moment. I'd always knew that I didn't want to chase girls down red carpets past a certain age. Like a running joke my friends and I had. Um, and again, that wasn't until 50, but I had always said that there was more to life. It's not necessarily that I wanted to step away. I think there was so much happening. Um, my body started to feel very different. I was in physical therapy for about 2 years, starting in 2022. My knee had a really bad injury from flying all the time, and the way that we stand and the way that we are not wearing the proper shoes in certain environments. And that's all on me. And I think my body started to wear and tear. And I started realizing that my wellness wasn't intact in a way that I would have loved it to be. And not only was I working in a high pressure environment, but I was working in an environment that moved quickly. And so I'd be in Australia on Monday and in Jakarta on Tuesday and in South Africa on Wednesday. And you're probably thinking, how the hell are you getting to all those three places so quick? That's how quick things moved. And that's a lot on the body. And I also realized that I was missing out on life's experiences. And I wanted to pause and slow down and take a deep breath and feel all of what was happening.
I'm so glad that you're talking about this because I think that people experience these things where they're experiencing burnout, whether that be emotionally, physically, and they don't take it seriously. They think, hey, this is just kind of par for the course here. Um, what do you think it is about you that you were able to, first of all, notice this, but then act on it so quickly?
Oh, I think I was actually like physically visiting doctors, and they were actually telling me like, you might want to pause. You might want to slow down. I remember my physical therapist saying, when you fly, you're going to need to fly like this. And I started putting in the request, and sometimes the requests were met. Sometimes the requests weren't met, or maybe not requests. That might sound a little harsh. Actually, no, it doesn't. I was putting in the ask, and sometimes, they'd be met. Sometimes they wouldn't. And there would be things I wouldn't be able to do because my body physically couldn't do it anymore. Um, like a lot in my personal life was changing. And I think I started getting to a space where I knew what meant more to me. My mother nor my father had made it to their 50s. And so I knew I wanted to focus on the quality of my life early on to make sure that I could make it to my 60s and my 70s and my 80s and shit, even 100. I want to be here with my children and my partner and my friends and my family. And I think thinking of all of that told me, okay, take a back seat. But there were moments I'm like, are you making the right decision? What are you doing? This is silly. Because again, it's something I talk about with friends. I didn't leave something that wasn't successful or leave something that I wasn't doing well in. I was at the height of my career, actually, when I decided to walk away, which is very rare.
Talk to us about what came next. So you decide to step away from hairstyling. What did you do next? Did you take a little bit of a hiatus? Did you jump immediately into a new project? What came next for you?
September 2023, I was in DC with family, and I got a call from one of my good girls, Janae Aiko, and she had said she was doing Coachella April 2024. My plan was to stop in December 2023 to take the entirety of 2024 to really focus on pausing. But I said, I'll do this with her. This is huge. I really love her. She really loves me. Let's make it happen. So that was the last job I took on. But then in December of 2023, I also decided to go back to school. So I'd enrolled in UCLA to start taking some business courses. And so as I was phasing out of here, I started to take some classes and live that double life, while also still pausing. So I don't want to say took a hiatus, but I definitely stopped doing work. I stopped going places. I turned down a few jobs, not even just with hair specifically, but jobs that forced me to be outside. If I wasn't already under contract for things, I wasn't really doing a lot because I wanted to slow down, unless they were things that I actually genuinely wanted to do and support and be at. So for the entirety of 2024, I said, let's pause. But then April 2024, I got in a phone call and we started talking about what the next steps of a new business would look like. And I kept saying to myself, I don't think it's time. I don't think I'm ready for this. I don't think this is the right time. But by May of 2024, we started building what you see now. And I had already had the name in mind in December of 2023, but I didn't think I was ready to start working on it yet until I got a call from a good friend and mentor, Kendra Bracken Ferguson. And, something we talked about was like, where do you go from here? What's next? What's life going to look like for you post this? And it came faster than I thought it would have.
Talk to us about actually building Samir Grey. Like, what was the impetus and why fragrance and wellness?
So my first entrance to beauty really early on as a kid was through fragrance and the wellness space. And so I knew I wanted to step back into the space because I had a prior brand that we launched in 2019 and shuttered in 2022. And something Kendra and I talked about was this not being the time to take a new route. You might want to pick up where you left off, maybe tell a different story now, but fully pick up where you left off. And in thinking through everything, that's what we decided to do. I understand the world of fragrance really well. I knew what I wanted this full brand to feel like. I knew the messaging I wanted to get across. And I knew I wanted to partner with some experts, and that's what we did.
And what was the hardest internal shift from creative talent to now CEO?
Oh my God. Having to show up. As crazy as that sounds. Like having to show up places. And I know that sounds insane, but I feel like as a creative talent, like I can say yes and no, but I feel like now there's some stuff that's like, can't really say no to this. Like you kind of have to be here. You have to be a part of this conversation. You have to do this. And that was a big shift for me. Even like being the first person on a lot of meetings, earlier on, if the meeting started at 3, I'm in at 2:50 taking notes, just really shifting my mindset so that I could be prepared for what this looks like. And I think school taught me a lot of that. Speaking to a lot of other founders taught me a lot of that. But really, all of those experiences really taught me to, okay, you're going to have to shift what it is you're doing.
That's so funny. And it kind of reminds me of, some friends that I have that work corporate jobs. They'll say, oh, you're self-employed. It must be so nice to create your own schedule. And I'm like, actually, I don't create my schedule. My schedule creates me. It is a different mindset shift because suddenly you're always working and your approach to work is very different. Because, when you're hired or contracted to do a job, somebody else is kind of like, they're at the wheel, so to speak, and they're giving you direction. When it's your business, you're the CEO, it's all up to you.
I'm actually not always working though. That's the thing I wanted to make sure that I tweaked this time around. My mornings are blocked off for me. So the first hour of waking up, it's fully me. The last hour of the night before I go to bed, it's fully me. I don't really work on weekends unless it's a dire emergency or like a shoot's happening or something's happening. But I don't work 24/7. I know a lot of founders do, but no, I need my me time. This business is not going to kill me.
Carl, you know what though? I'm going to take a page out of your book because I am burned out this right now.
I think that's the thing I see. And that's part of the reason why I built this business, really honing in on the importance of pausing and being still and allowing yourself to not feel like you have to beat to the world's drum, but beat to the drum that's in your heart. That was really important to me. And that's how I live my life. And that's how I think people should be living their life, which is so different from what the world tells you to do. But I think that's how we should be living.
I agree with that. And I think that when you do prioritize yourself, it creates like a space and a freshness with like new energy to then bring to your work. Whereas like if you're just trying to grind 24/7, things start to feel a little more monotonous and exhausting and less inspired. So I agree with that 100%. We need our rest.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. Because if we're not fully together, how do we continue to float and move and groove in the world? Yeah, I agree.
Mhm. And one thing that I love about Samir Grey, Ka, is that it's rooted in family and legacy.
Yeah.
Why was honoring the women who raised you so central to this brand?
Community has always been at the front of how I operated and how I moved throughout the world. I don't think there is an I in team. You know, there's so many people that make up who I am, how I operate, the whole nine. And I knew the women that came before me were really integral in helping shape who I am and, me being able to be expressive or me being able to be so kind or me having certain things about me that people enjoy. It's really because of the women that have raised me. And I wanted to do something to honor them and other women that fight every day and their fight goes unnoticed. I think, women do such a great job at showing up unapologetically every single day. And I wanted to honor those women. I love the gentleman. Don't get me wrong. I love the gentleman, but I was raised by all women.
Absolutely. And Carl, one thing that you've created as well which I think is so powerful. And I actually have a lot of questions about this because I've never seen it done like this. One, the parfum is inspired by a vacation you never got to take with your mother. How did you go about translating grief into something beautiful and tangible that can be shared with the world?
I think post her passing, I was just talking about this with my aunt. You find yourself trying to create some sort of memory so much because it feels like they're leaving you further and like they're moving further and further away. I think it started coming to me, just like her in a dream started coming to me. And I just remember every night I'd see us on the beach, no one there, and just laughing and talking and having a good time. Sun glazing, not exactly what we describe in the brand. I think from that, I would always dream about like what it would look like for us to take a vacation together. The only vacation we ever got to take was my high school graduation, but she decided to invite my nieces. And so it didn't feel like a vacation. It felt like two parents taking kids away. So we don't really get to take a lot of vacations. And so I started to dream about what a vacation would feel like. And I think that was what the vacation started to feel like in my mind. And when speaking to the development team, I knew that that's what I wanted to create with this. I knew that I wanted it to feel like one moment, one memory, one piece of nostalgia, one thing that you'll always want to go back to, you know. And that's something that I hear today from people with the fragrance. It's like a scent that they always want to return to because they feel something. And that's exactly how I felt with this dream. It was a dream that I wanted to remember every single day. Like somehow I'd try to remember pieces of the dream every day. Yeah.
And how did you go about translating that dream into a fragrance? Like, what was the first step? And also, when did you know it was done? Like, do you have that memory when you smelled it and you're like, okay, this is it?
I will not take credit for that. I have to give credit to our perfumer, Cecile. You know, she was able to hear the story of this dream. And of course, we walked through a lot of my benchmarks and a lot of scent memories that I had and what I wanted it to feel like in those ways. But I think from that, she was able to take all of that and turn it into a few different iterations. But what's on the market today was the first thing I smelled in the first place. I'm a very decisive person. And I think running a business, you have to be as decisive as possible. And so upon smelling that, I was like, oh, I think this is the one. It was not supposed to be named one, but I was like, oh, this is the one. We needed to tweak some things about it, but smelling it, it took me exactly to where I needed it to go. But all credit to Cecile. I think she's a mastermind. Not I think, I know she's a mastermind behind what she does. And it was beautiful being able to watch her take the deep emotion and story that I was trying to convey through scent and be able to bring it over into a physical format. I think that was beautiful.
Luxury often feels exclusive, and yet you describe Samir Grey as accessible self love, which I think is just such a great way to reframe what luxury is. Why was that distinction so important to you?
Watching the luxury space, it just felt so starky and it feels so pretentious at times. Walking in spaces and, you know, even though I may be able to afford most of the stores I walk into, the energy I'm met with sometimes feels a bit off-putting. And I wanted to create a space where people were able to get the same quality of an experience, but they were able to be met with something that felt a bit more accessible in terms of the energy, a bit warmer, a bit lighter and airier. And so I knew I wanted to create a brand that felt really premium, but not pretentious, something that felt like you're getting the highest quality possible, but you're not getting all the fluff and the starkiness and the stares and the looks and the big separation. You know, I come from, and here's where my beauty background played a role in this. Something my aunt always tells me is the barbershop and the hair salon are one of the only places where like everyone of every background can come and lollygag and have conversation and, you know, key with one another. And that's what I wanted to create here, like a space where everybody could come, talk, chat, shop, do the whole nine. And I think we've been doing a pretty good job at that.
And you've said that Black wellness and culture go hand in hand. What does that mean to you? And how do you hope that that is translated through your brand?
Well, I'll say the brand is for any human. We didn't lock in and hone in on creating something that was just for the Black consumer. We were really focused on creating something that was for people who want to pause, who want to slow down, who want something premium and not pretentious. And so that was clear from day one. And so wellness and culture, as it relates to who I am, they go hand in hand because, you know, we as a people, like I said, we do need to pause. We do need to slow down. We do need to allow ourselves the grace and the space to just be for a moment. The world is insane right now. And sometimes you may wake up and you may feel like you don't know what to do or you don't know what's going on or you don't know how to move and operate. And that can be a lot for a lot of people. And I wanted to create a space where people felt like they did have the freedom to just pause in a world that often feels like chaos.
Absolutely. And like as a gay founder myself, I think that especially with everything that's going on in the world nowadays, politically speaking, we don't have to get into that. That's a whole other conversation. But I will say that representation is really important. And I really do love that you're saying, like, hey, this brand isn't for one specific group of people. It's for everyone to come and feel that self-love and really love the brand, because we need more people that are placing emphasis on things like that in the world now. So I think what you're doing is really cool.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. That means a lot. Thank you.
Do you feel that balancing business and activism do you find it difficult? Is it something that you focus on, or is it just something that kind of happens as a result of what you're doing? How do you balance the two?
I think when you are a person that has set standards and set beliefs, everything sort of kind of feels like one. So I don't feel like an activist, but I also sometimes don't feel like a businessman. I just feel like it's in my nature to show up for people that look like me, whether they're a BIPOC person or somebody in the LGBTQIA plus community. Like, I find it important to be that piece of representation. And on the business side, I mean, I love business. And so I think it comes pretty naturally to me, because it's who I am as a person deep down inside.
And Ka, you self-funded this brand. What's something about bootstrapping that people romanticize but do not understand?
Ugh, the biggest thing is you have all creative control. You have all the ownership, so you get to do anything you want. And while I think that's true to an extent, I think when you're working amongst a team of people, you want to be able to collaborate. Your consumer will also start to dictate what things look like. As we were building out the brand initially, we thought we were building X, but as we're building, we're now realizing we're building Y, which isn't a bad thing because X and Y are really close to each other. See, I didn't say A and Z, X and Y. They're really close to each other. And the consumer's letting us know, like, oh, here's what this looks like. Here's where things go. And I think some people often get it confused that with self-funding, you have all this creative control. You do, but you don't. It's like romanticized that you can just do anything. And you have to be a little more strict on how you're spending and what you invest in creatively, where you invest, what you say yes to, what you say no to. I say no to a lot because a lot just doesn't make sense for who we are and where we are right now. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like when you're a kid, you say, I can't wait to grow up so I can do whatever I want. And then you grow up and you're like, oh, wait a second, that's pretty difficult. And you can't just do whatever you want. You have to do things a certain way.
Right. And being able to be self-funded, I think it does allow me freedom, but not in a way where I can do everything I want because it is self-funded, meaning the budget does cap at some point.
Right. What does leadership look like for you now compared to 5 years ago?
Oh, leadership now looks like collaboration. Leadership now looks like working amongst creatives that are able to share their opinions, their expertise, and work in an environment where their thoughts and opinions are heard, valued, and used. Leadership looks like slowing down and understanding that at 8 p.m., that email can wait until 9 a.m. the next morning. Leadership looks like saying no more, a lot more, a lot more.
This is hitting me right here. God, this is hitting me right here. I feel like a lot of the things you're saying are things that I need to hear right now.
It's like a mini therapy session.
Exactly, exactly. It's funny because usually when I have these conversations, a lot of my guests will say, "Oh my God, Alexander, that felt like a therapy session." Right now, I feel like it's the other way around. I'm in therapy right now.
My therapist would love this. That's so funny.
Kahh, what kind of founder do you refuse to become?
Oof. The founder that's a major micromanager and looking over people's shoulders, the one who's not allowing people to voice their opinions. I don't ever want to become that person. I don't ever want to be the person that's led by money or led by what society thinks I should do for this brand or how this brand should operate. I don't ever want to become that person.
So, what does success look like for this brand beyond revenue, Kahh?
Oh, that's a good question. What does success look like for Samir Grey beyond revenue? For the message to start to get clearer for people that stillness is productive and it's okay to take a beat and take a pause. And whether that looks like going for a quick walk, putting the phone down, I don't know, not multitasking while you're trying to make dinner or lunch or breakfast, taking an extra 5 minutes to sit in bed a little longer to think, slowing down while you're doing your morning or nighttime routine. Like I want that message to get across to more people.
Where do you see Samir Grey in 5 years, culturally, not just commercially?
Ooh, I see it in the toiletry bags of all of the people that want to live like this and the people that, already live like this. Like I see it in their toiletry bags. I see the brand becoming one of the household names as it relates to fragrance and personal care and being a part of the conversation of something that revolutionized what beauty as a whole, or luxury beauty, if you will, hate that term, but what that is. So I'm excited to see where the brand goes. I'm excited to see what it starts to pan out like. I'm genuinely like a kid in a candy store, like really excited.
And when you imagine someone opening their toiletry bag and seeing Samir Grey, what do you hope they feel immediately?
It's like, oh, I needed this, or like, ooh, I wanted to smell this today. This brings me some sort of comfort. This brings me some sort of warmth. And I'm solely referring to the fragrance itself, because who knows what'll be in their toiletry bag in the future. But yeah, that's what I'd want them to feel with that.
And Kahh, if your mother could see the brand today, what do you think she'd say?
What do I think she would say? I think she'd be really proud. I think she has this nickname that she called me that I would never say here. But I think she would say that and she'd be really proud, and she'd be like a part of my street marketing team. Like she'd be out in the fields selling it to all of her neighbors, and telling people like, yeah, I can get you some product free. Yeah, I think she'd be really proud. She was proud of me even in the very early stages of my career, because she passed in the very beginning of my career. She was even proud back then. I'd get messages from her saying, please bring me back a souvenir from Australia or London. Like, bring me back a souvenir from anywhere so I can feel like I was there too. Yeah.
And Kahh, I had some guests on the show a few months back. They're young founders. And one of them said that starting a business, it's almost like you get this accelerated version of life because you learn a lot about yourself and about life in general in the process. And I think that in that self-discovery and in those life lessons that we're learning when we're working on a business or a passion project, I think that sometimes as a result of the learning, something is healed within us. What do you feel this journey has healed in you?
Mm, it's a loaded question. um, that vulnerability is a superpower. Um, it's like something that my therapist are talking through right now. Yeah, vulnerability is a superpower. I'm learning that me sharing any of these stories is resonating with so many people from many different walks of life. And in my earlier 20s, oh, I was as quiet as a mouse. I didn't want to talk about anything. I didn't need to because I was able to hide behind the work and the people. I don't have that luxury anymore. Yeah, yeah, that's definitely one of the things.
What part of Kahh Spence today would shock the version of you from 10 years ago?
That he's this vulnerable. That he is this open and able to show up in this way. Also, that he is this fine at 31. Okay, no, that's too bad. No, but that he is this open and he is this vulnerable, and he has really allowed his morals and values to stay consistent over the years. I think he'd be shocked because most people shift throughout the years based on opportunity and money and so forth. But I think he'd be excited to know that like life continued to happen, but who he was deep down inside never wavered.
I love that. And I actually feel that's weird. Like as you were saying that, I was kind of thinking about myself, and I think I feel the same way. I don't know what your experience was, but when I grew up in a small town. I know you grew up in New York, but I grew up in a very closed-minded environment. I was closeted, and I think that I was pretending to be somebody that I wasn't for so long that when I finally was brave enough to step into my truth, even after coming out, I feel like there was a lot of undoing that, I guess, the wall that I put up and the facade that I had going on. So I think that you're right. Being vulnerable is a superpower because it's not until that you're fully in touch with yourself that you can actually have the courage, the drive, and the tenacity to go after what you want and build the life that you've been aspiring to your entire life.
Amen. I believe that. Yep. Mm-hmm.
If someone listening feels stuck in a career that no longer fits, what would you tell them?
To pause, to start to ask themselves, how does this make your body feel at this stage? And not in a physical way, but more so in an emotional way. What sort of energies or feelings start to come up for you as you're thinking through what that looks like, or as you're in that setting or that job. And if it doesn't start to feel good anymore, it might be time to pause and walk away, because our bodies tell us things before it reaches our minds. I'm a firm believer of that. And I think that's what I would tell someone.
And what is the biggest life lesson you've learned so far?
Oh my God. The biggest life lesson I've learned so far in my very short life. I think I'm still learning that. I might have to get back to you on that one.
Okay, yeah. So when you do your next From Vision to Creation interview, let's get again.
First question out the gate.
Well, and Kahh, where's the best place where people can keep up with you, the brand, your work, and everything that you're doing?
You can keep up with me at everywhere Kahh Spence, KAHHSPENCE, and then the lovely brand. Can you see that? Yep, you can. For that at everythingsamirgrey.co, SAMIRGREY.co. Oh my God, I almost forgot the spelling of that. And even if you make a mistake and type in .com, we own most of the domain, so it'll revert you back to the site anyway. You're fine.
Perfect. Well, I'm going to include all of the handles to your social media profiles as well as the website link in the episode notes below. So everybody listening, I highly encourage you to go check out Kahh's Instagram, all of his social profiles, and definitely check out Samir Grey. Kahh, if you could go back in time and offer your younger self one bit of advice specifically tailored to you and your life's trajectory, maybe back to the younger Kahh who is just about to move to Los Angeles, what would you tell him?
Slow down. Everything's going to happen exactly how it's supposed to. I was trying to rush through life. I think my team at the time, I had a 50-year plan planned out. So I was 21. We were talking about like what life would look like at year 50 and 55. Baby, slow down. Slow down. That is exactly what I would tell him. It's okay. You're going to be fine. Slow down.
Well, Kahh, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. This was so much fun, and I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. This was very enlightening. This was good. I like this. Thank you.